The audio grind.
Now then, everyone, welcome to episode 5 of the audio grind. Today we're going to be talking about capturing guitars. So I kind of feel like I'm on home turf with this. What about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like playing it and I like doing the whole thing, but I'm not quite sure if I'm really that technologically minded, but I am definitely process minded, and I have a very strict process of how I've done things, which seems to work for me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
good.
what we're going to do is we're going to start off. We're going to talk about everything in the chain of recording a guitar, aren't we? Yeah. So we're going to be working from literally the guitar through the pickups, cable into like amplifiers and stuff like that. So obviously the first part of the chain would be the actual guitar itself, unless you want to be completely finicky and start talking about what pick you're using. But
Yeah, I think that's a bit too much, mate.
so obviously you're sort of sat in front of a wall of guitars here. But guitars, I mean,
Yeah.
incredibly sort of personal choice, aren't they? You know, like I'm not going to sit here and say that you need to be playing this guitar or that guitar.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, out of all these guitars that are hung up here, I'd say I use literally like maybe 10 to 15% of them, and I'd say only maybe 35% of these guitars are actually set up to play. Apart from if I need something specific with them, I'd actually set it up for that kind of thing. So I don't think it's a case of, you definitely need this guitar for this sound. You just, whatever's right, you know what I mean? Whatever kind of works in that kind of sound if you're after a particular, like, I know I don't really want to jump ahead and go straight to pickups, but if you're after a specific sound and a guitar's got P90s, you're not going to pick up something completely different. You're not going to pick up a Telecaster and then try and fix it in post to make it sound like a P90. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I guess like obviously you're kind of spot for choice with what you've got kind of sat on the wall behind you, but like if you're someone that is doing a lot of guitar recording, maybe you're a sort of session player or something like that, or an aspiring session player, what I would say is you need a couple of different sounds in your arsenal. So say for example, like myself, like it's my main job, I'm a recording guitar player, so I know that I definitely need a Strat kind of sound. So I need like something with single coils. I know I need a Telecaster type of sound. So I've got a couple of Strats. I've got a Telecaster. Personally, I don't really get on with Gibson style guitars. It just doesn't feel physically right for me. They always kind of feel a little bit small, that smaller scale length. It's like 24 and 3/4 inch scale length. It just doesn't suit me. So I prefer something that's a little bit bigger, 25.5 inch scale length. So I get most of my Gibson style sounds, if that's what I'm looking for, with my Ibanez guitars, which some people will probably say I'm totally cheating with that, and that it's not authentic. But the way that I see it is, it's like humbucker sound, Strat sound, and Tele sound, and they're the three main sounds for me that I sort of need access to.
The main three which you can replicate with somebody else, but they're the most identifiable out of the three. I mean, a Gibson sort of sound I think can be quite muddied with different, like you said, an Ibanez. I mean, I've got a couple of Les Pauls and all that, but to be quite honest, I find myself using the Tokais because I think they're better than the Gibsons, but it sounds like a Gibson. So if I want that particular sound, I would use that. I'd probably just use the Tokai rather than the actual Gibson itself because, well, not to get into the nitty gritty, but it fucking holds its tuning for one. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is an absolutely massive factor. I'm not going to sit here and start going into slagging Gibson off because it'll just piss people off. The Gibson purists will be out in force with their knives sharpened. But I mean, honestly, I've played a lot of nice Gibsons. Into the sort of £3,000-4,000 kind of territory, and honestly, I've never played one that holds tune.
I mean,
Never-
we've got. I think it's we've got a standard. I'm not even sure which fucking model it is, and we've got a gold top, and they're like it's some serious guitar there. But to be quite honest, yeah, they do sound good. But if I have to tune my guitar like 8 times just to do one fucking line, it's ridiculous. It's just not worth it. It really isn't. And I don't really. I mean, I know you could go down the stage of modding it, but I fucking shouldn't have to. I don't want to touch an old guitar like that. It's just ridiculous.
Completely. So, I mean, as far as guitars go, that's like, with it being such a sort of personal choice, um, I think we can kind of move on and start talking about other factors within that, as long as you've got access to the type of sounds that you want to be recording.
Sure.
So, a few little basic things that are like little bugbears of mine. Obviously, most of the guitars that I record, I'm going to be recording myself, but there's been plenty of times in the past where you're recording other guitar players. Make sure your strings are at least relatively new.
Absolutely.
I've had it in the past where I was recording a metal band a few years ago, and the rhythm guitar player turned up to record, and you could see the grime on his strings, and I was like, when did you change your strings last on this? And he was like, oh, that's, pretty recently, like, about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. And I'm like, that is not recently. Like, how many rehearsals have you done? How many gigs have you done with these strings since then? That is like, these strings are dead. These strings died weeks ago.
Honestly, I don't know about you, but for me, strings, it's a fucking proper chunk of my change at the end of the month. I go through many, it's ridiculous, like, how much strings I go through. And even then, I think I'm lazy, because I don't think I change them as much as I should. Absolutely, especially bass string. I mean, the jazz I've been using, sitting like just over 2 years I've been doing this, I've changed them maybe twice.
Fully. Well, I got a small loan out recently to pay for these bastards.
Oh, they're bass strings, I can't say.
Yeah. I've got some airy ball 5-string bass strings, and I've just got some regular super stinky bass strings. But yeah,
how much did they
you're
set you
looking
back?
In total, I think they were 60 quid.
Fucking hell.
I know, it's bad, isn't it?
A fucking endorsement or something, mate. Fuck.
Absolutely, yeah.
But no,
if you're in a position to endorse us for bass strings, then
yeah,
bear us in mind.
Ernie Ball, if you're watching this, which you probably fucking aren't, but
is that you, Ernie?
Yeah.
Endorses, you bastard. So anyway, strings, like, there's nothing quite like the snap and the response and that extra little bit of brightness and twang that you get from fresh steels.
Absolutely.
So if you want like the absolute best quality take, get your guitar restrung either that morning or like maybe like the day before. One other little bugbear of mine: setup.
Yeah, this is a really big one, really fucking big one, mate. Like, just before you even go into it, like, a setup is the difference between a guitar session that takes 45 minutes to an hour to get your basics down to one that takes a full fucking day, because you're having to. And even then, if you have a shit setup, somebody's going to have to go through the painstaking task. This if you've recorded it DI, if you've done chords, of melodyne in your fucking guitar because your fucking intonation's wank. It's not fucking.
We don't want to live in that world, do we? We don't want to be living in that world of having to melodyne your guitar takes.
No, it's not. I've done it before and it's horrible. When I've had to reamp somebody's guitars before, and it's not great.
Well, there's a couple of aspects of setup that I want to talk about briefly. First one is, if your action is like ludicrously low, or your neck is bent backwards or something like that, or forwards. Well, if your neck is sort of bending a certain way and you're getting rattles, maybe like lower down towards the sort of business end of the guitar, first fret, second fret, third fret, maybe even up to sort of fifth or sixth fret. If you're rattling in that area, there's not really an awful lot I'm going to be able to do in post-production to fix that. If it's coming through the amplifier and it's getting recorded, then there isn't really a lot I can do about fixing a rattle. So if you are tracking it, if you are committing it, that's what it's going to sound like.
Yeah. Even with distortion and shit, you can still hear it. Well, you just end up getting that really weird metallic twang, don't you? Like,
sometimes, especially if you're layering the guitars, if you're playing like rock or metal music, where you're going to be thinking about like double tracking or even quad tracking or even maybe more than that, then you're just going to get double trouble, aren't you? Or quadruple trouble, because you've got like twice the rattle or 4 times the rattle. The other aspect to setup that can sort of be equally as painful is if your guitar's not set up properly in a way that it makes it completely uncomfortable to play. So if your action's maybe like higher than you'd like it to be, and it's going to affect your physical performance, it's all about getting the balance right. And it is an area that is kind of kind of neglected, especially among modern guitar players, especially among new guitar players. And I'm a bit of a bastard for this because I don't know anything about setting a guitar up. I've learnt bits and bobs recently, but I am just a guitar player and I know my limitations because I'm not very mechanically minded. I'm not very technically minded when it comes to things like this. But when I speak to guitar players like a generation or two older than me, they all knew how to do it because when they were kids, they weren't sat there playing Tomb Raider, were they? They were probably taking their guitars apart and, seeing how they worked. And, they were better with things like nuts and bolts and screws and, they could just fix things.
Well, I had a fucking guitar lesson, or not guitar lesson, sorry, a lesson in setting guitar up from your mate Keith over the fucking phone the other week, didn't I? He was like, twist that, do that. I was like, Keith, I don't know what you mean.
Absolutely.
Show us the neck.
I mean, like for years, I didn't have anybody that I trusted to set my guitars up because I don't just want to give my guitars to any old dickhead just to sort of, for it to come back with a neck like a banana.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found Keith, and Keith's been setting my guitars up for me now for a couple of months, and the difference it's made to my job has been absolutely fantastic. If I'm playing a guitar that he's set up, it's not just because it sounds clearer, it's not just because it's easier to play. Like a big part of it is it's brought some of the joy back because I'm having a really good time. I'm like, this feels so nice. It feels kind of like familiar and homely.
I have a couple of guitars. The one particular guitar that gets set up like regularly is the Telly. Do you know the I think it's the 59 or the 54. I'm not quite sure which year it is, but that one gets set up by Carlo.
I think it's the 59 or the 54. Yes, I'm not quite sure which year it is.
But no, I get that one set up quite consistently because I use it all the time, and when I have to go to another guitar for a different sound, I miss it so much. I'm there trying to fucking drop the Telecaster into drop A so I can play the metal on it because I like playing it that fucking much. Obviously, it don't fucking work, but I'm trying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've had that in the past where like you just really like playing one particular guitar at that moment in time. And you're like, I'll see if I can get away with doing it on this guitar. Like at the minute, like this guitar. Well, this guitar's been set up amazing for a while. This one, Keith sorted this out for me. This is like a Strat custom build that Craig from Axis has sorted out, but it just plays so clean at the minute. It's just a total gem. So if I can play that in a session, I'm gonna.
It sounds fucking. I mean, obviously, I don't know what it plays like, but it sounds fucking dreamy, and I can't wait to have a bash in it when I come over. Like, I'm proper looking forward to it because it looks fucking sick as well. Like when I hear you playing, it sounds like your fucking playing's ridiculous anyway, but I can tell it's like. It's easier to play than some of your other guitars, maybe because you seem to be doing things like a bit better. Well, not better, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You look like you're having more of a good time.
Yeah, I think you can tell. I think you can tell when a guitar player sounds happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So yes. Anyway, moving on from setup. So this is obviously like the beginning of the signal chain. We've got guitar. We've got aspects of the guitar that need to be right before we even consider tracking it. So we've got strings, we've got the setup of it. If all of that is in place, then we'd be sort of like moving down the signal chain. So like that stuff, but cable.
Yeah.
Hang on, we've missed one out, haven't we?
What have we missed?
Because before it hits the cable.
Oh, I know what you're gonna crack out the fucking dissertation.
It goes through the pickups. Yeah, well, you see, obviously, if you don't know, I work for a guitar parts company called Axis Arrows, and my main job is I test and develop and provide sound recordings of pickups. So if I get this wrong, I'm going to get lambasted from the boss. I texted him before we started this episode, and I said, right, we're going to be talking a little bit about guitars today on the audio grind, and he texts back saying, I've been waiting for this with knives sharpened.
Honestly, Craig is my favourite person to message for information because you'll give him the tiniest nugget of like maybe a question or something, and he'll come back with everything, like absolutely everything to do with anything about that particular thing you've asked him, and more, and it'll be like a fucking essay, and you'll look at it and you'll think, Jesus Christ, and you'll read it all, and it's all like pure gold, like absolute fucking. It's like wow.
His knowledge on all things, well, guitar related, to be honest, electric guitar related, is absolutely stupid. Like, to be honest as well, like, with it being a family-run business, his mum's knowledge on guitars is insane.
Does she even play?
No. No. I remember a few years ago, I was over at HQ for some reason. I don't often go there. I normally do all the work, like, just out of my own studio. And Craig just said to me, "Oh, watch this." And he pulled up a photograph of a Les Paul. And he said to his mum, "What's wrong with this?" And she had a look at it. And I'm having a look at it and I'm thinking, fucking hell, I've been playing guitar for like 20 odd years. I should be able to tell if there's something wrong with it. And I couldn't see a thing wrong with it. And Jackie has a look at it and she goes, "Oh, the silly bugger." And I'm thinking, what she spotted that I hadn't? And Craig said, "Right, go on then, what's wrong with it?" And she was just like, "Well, it's 52mm spacing, isn't it, for them pickups? He's been and bought a 50mm bridge, hasn't he?" And I'm like, wow.
I don't even know what that fucking means.
It didn't quite line up. Like, it just didn't, like, the strings didn't quite line up, like, going over the poles. It was something like that anyway. But anyway, like, I digress. But yeah, the knowledge of everybody at that company is just absolutely mental.
Fucking hell.
So in order to not get this wrong, I've actually, like, pulled up my conversation with Craig on WhatsApp, who, by the way, is still typing.
Fuck off. Is he really?
Yeah. So I'm looking at Craig Jackson online typing.
Yeah.
He's still going, so I'm probably not going to get through everything that you said, Craig. But anyway, yeah. So pickups. Before we even get into the sort of like the Craig stuff, people have this sort of, especially like if you play like Ibanez style guitars or like Super Strat style guitars, they have this obsession with wanting to change their pickups out. And I sometimes think to myself, why? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I fell into the trap of it when I first started playing guitar. I ironically got myself an Ibanez as one of my first proper guitars. And the first thing I wanted to do was put bare knuckle pickups in it. Not because I didn't even know what a bare knuckle pickup was. I liked the advert in the Total Guitar magazine. It sounded cool. I didn't even know what they were supposed to do. I didn't even actually even know what I was supposed to be achieving with buying these new pickups. But I was told, you got to replace your pickups, or you're doing metal music, or put fucking bare knuckle in, or whatever it is. It's for me, it was one of those things. But
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And what it is we're all a kind of victim of marketing. And guitar players were suckers for it. I mean, obviously, having worked in the industry for a little while now, I'm much more au fait with how all that works, But you just said about bare knuckle, like it was just a thing that you did. You bought, you buy a new guitar, you buy like a Super Strat, and it's like, oh well, I'm obviously gonna have to put replacement pickups in there, and I need some bare knuckles, I need some Damazios, I need some Seymour Duncans, and generally the brand that you will identify with the most will be the brand of pickups that are used by probably your favourite guitar players. Like before I started like exclusively working for Axis R Us and doing their pickup work, I used to use Damazios because I grew up listening to Steve Vai, John Petrucci, Joe Satriani, Steve Lukather, that were all endorsees of Damazio.
Yeah.
So it makes total sense, doesn't it? It's like it's the same way that when you're a kid, you might go and buy Nike shoes because you think they're going to make you run faster.
Yeah. Well, I remember this was a conversation I actually had with Craig. It was one of the first conversations I had with him about pickups. If you remember back when I first got my 7-string, and I was having super mega problems with it. It just sounded shit through the Mesa, because I was running the Mesa triple on not full but near enough full, and it just sounded like a fucking fart. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
So, and you was like, right, get yourself, I mean, I'm jumping the gun here, but I got myself one of those fucking Ibanez Tube Screamer pedals, try and tame it. Still sounded shit. And we couldn't figure it out. And I remember speaking to Craig about it. I was like, I need to buy some new pickups for my 7-string. He was like, I don't think you do. He was like,
Yeah,
Like,
it sounds like Craig.
Yeah, he was like, you don't need any new pickups. I was like, why? Like, surely that should be the first thing I'm going for if it sounds shit. It was like, nah, basically what you need to do is look at why, it's doing the thing it's doing. Like, your pickups are obviously way too fucking hot. So you can do things, bring the volume down before it goes into the amp. Or even though the boost pedal is bringing it back up again. But
Yeah.
I ended up going down the road of literally just taking some of the winds out of my pickup wiring. Well, I took it to a guy that actually dewound my pickups instead of going for these really... Because I think Craig did find me some, but there was going to cost like a ridiculous amount of money because it was fucking angled, because it said one of those really weird... fan fret net. It was a nightmare. But yeah, it was definitely kind of an eye-opener, because that was like the first kind of interaction I had of, I don't need to buy brand new pickups every time I have a problem. Because he was just like, don't buy them, you don't need it.
Yeah, it's a strange one, because like I guess especially now with metal going down the route that it's gone, where like guitars are like severely down-tuned. If you're going down into drop A or maybe even like drop G on a 7-string. I mean, like 8 strings obviously sort of start down in G flat.
Yeah.
So if you've got a super high output pickup, that naturally, it's a little bit of a sort of false statement to say that it creates more low end. It doesn't actually create more low end, but in a roundabout way, it creates more perceived low end, if that makes any sense to, people watching this. So more perceived low end when you're that low down in the register already is going to sound muddy. Well, and by the time you start layering those guitars up, you're just going to get a wall of mush, where what we're actually needing more with guitars that are tuned that low down is more definition, more clarity, and that comes from actually sort of taking those frequencies away, stripping them back.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm right on this, so Craig, don't fucking shoot me if you're watching this. But with higher output pickups, I noticed that my signal was just constantly distorted, even when I had going straight into my interface or going straight into a preamp, and I found it was just creating more harmonics in the low mids, and that's what was creating the fat horrible noise. I mean, that's just from my observation. But as soon as I unwound the pickups, I noticed it wasn't distorting anymore just from the pickup. It was a much cleaner sound, and now I can bang it into, I can put it back through the tube screamer, and it doesn't sound like fucking shit. It sounds really fucking good now.
Yeah. That does make sense what you're saying. So yeah, it's a thing of, if you are looking to replace your pickups, if you really sort of want to replace your pickups, my advice would be, as somebody that has worked with pretty much every style of pickup that there is out there, do it with purpose. Because here's an example. A kid came for a guitar lesson a few months back, and he turned up with a brand new Ibanez that he'd bought. Lovely guitar. And he was saying how nice it sounded. He was like, it sounds really nice. It sounds really snappy. It's got loads of punch to it. I can't wait to rip the pickups out and put some of these bare knuckles in. And I was like, well, you just said how great it sounds and how it sounds really snappy and how it's got all this sort of nice, chuggy, chunky front end. Why are you now going to change that? And he's like, oh, well, you replace your pickups, don't you, in Ibanez? And I'm like, well, if it's come to you with the pickups sounding great and you're like, oh wow, this sounds good, why are you changing it if it's not broken? Why are you trying to fix something that isn't broken?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think a lot of it is marketing.
Yeah, it is honestly, like, a huge amount of it is marketing. I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that changing pickups doesn't make a difference to your sound. It obviously does, and I'm not going to go into the insane detail of how different materials are going to affect the sounds in different ways. If anybody's got any questions about that, you can drop that in the comments. But there's an argument to say that there's no such thing as a bad pickup, because essentially, like, a pickup is just like its own EQ curve, much like a microphone is. If you're picking up a vocal, if you try and use different microphones, it's going to have naturally a different curve, and a pickup is like that. Providing you're getting the sort of level of output that you need for your guitar to sound okay, if it's hitting the amp at a decent enough level, there shouldn't really be such a thing as a bad pickup. However, I have played bad pickups.
The audio grind.